Ferrari has been hit by another big storm from within its own team. Amid their efforts to usher in a new era with Lewis Hamilton, shocking news leaked to the public, stunning the Formula One world. Hamilton's longtime engineer has reportedly been kicked out of the Red Squad. This news triggered anxiety within the team and invited wild speculation about the stability of Ferrari's major project for the future. What really happened behind the scenes of this legendary team? Let's discuss it, and don't forget to press the subscribe button. In Formula One, the relationship between a driver and a race engineer is more than just technical. For drivers, engineers are lifelines. They're the only voice drivers here when their bodies are racing under 5G pressure and with a heart rate of 180 beats per minute. Engineers are not just data transmitters. They are emotional guides. They are war companions. Lewis Hamilton knows this better than anyone. For more than a decade, he has shared the wheel with Peter Bonington, also known as Bono. In a world that processes thousands of data points per second, Bono is a fixed point. He can read Hamilton's tone and respond with precision, whether it's strategy, a joke, or a knowing silence. That relationship wasn't built overnight. It was built over 11 seasons of hard-fought battles, 82 wins, and 4 world titles together. Now, all that was gone. At Ferrari, Hamilton didn't have Bono. He had Riccardo Adami. So far, Adami's voice wasn't one of conviction. It was an echo of emptiness. Ferrari wasn't just a racing team. It was an institution and a symbol of Italian pride. It was the name with the longest history and heaviest burden in Formula One. However, behind the glamour and romance, there was a dark side that couldn't be ignored. Stifling internal politics, a rigid organizational structure resembling an old fortress, and a culture resistant to change. Riccardo Adami, a veteran who had long been part of Ferrari's pulse, stood in the midst of that dynamic. He was Sebastian Vettel's trusted engineer and was previously part of a technical structure closely aligned with the old Prancing Horse team's philosophy. But times have changed. Adami is now what many call Vasseur's man, a loyalist, not just a technician. In an environment so sensitive to loyalty and power, that's a complicated issue. Things became even more complicated when Lewis Hamilton joined. He wasn't just another driver. He was a living legend, a world record holder and a global icon who brought a big name, big expectations and, most importantly, big influence. That influence made many in Ferrari's old structure uneasy. Influence meant the potential for change, and change threatened those who had grown comfortable with the status quo. In Monaco, the difference between a champion and a failure could be determined by a tenth of a second. On that street circuit, the tipping point was the 30-second lap. Hamilton, sharp and focused, asked over the radio, "What is the delta time I need to attack?" 3 corners passed. No answer. By the time the instruction finally came, it was too late. The opportunity was gone. In F1, lost opportunities never come back. The telemetry never lies. There was a slight change in Hamilton's driving style. A small doubt. A lapse in belief. To the outside world, it may not have been noticeable. But to those reading the data, it was the first sign of a major rift. Hamilton no longer trusted the voice in his ear. Is Riccardo Adami mad at me? To the untrained ear, the question might sound like an innocent joke from a driver to his team. But to those who have followed Lewis Hamilton's career and understand Formula One communication, it was no idle phrase. It sounded like a quiet whisper in a noisy cabin, like a silent cry. It was an SOS not from a driver frustrated with his car's performance, but from a legend who was beginning to feel alienated in what should have been his new home. What made it even more poignant was that it wasn't uttered in a casual moment, in an interview, or during a press conference. There was no PR script and no filtering of words. It was a raw, honest, and deeply personal outpouring of emotion unleashed in the middle of a race when the adrenaline was still high and there was no time for pretense. That was the heart of a 7-time world champion who was slowly finding himself alone and thrown from his comfort zone. He was searching for a foothold in a new universe that might not welcome him with open arms. The most pointed comment came from former F1 driver Juan Pablo Montoya, who was unafraid. When he said, "An engineer who is silent during a race is not worthy of being a world champion," the paddock fell silent. Not because they disagreed, but because they knew he was right. Most drivers have up-and-down relationships with their engineers. But what happened to Hamilton and Adami wasn't a mere dynamic, it was a dysfunction. There was a breakdown in communication at the most vital level. According to insiders, Adami kept his distance even during briefings. Communication was at its coldest and most formal. There was no personal connection. There was no indication that a relationship was developing. In fact, it was a relationship that was dying before it had a chance to grow. Now, the question is no longer, can this be fixed? The real question is, when will Lewis act? Hamilton's situation at Ferrari is no ordinary dilemma. He is at a risky crossroads. He could ask for a new engineer. However, that would not be an easy move. It would mean opening up an internal political conflict within Ferrari, confronting a notoriously rigid and hierarchical team culture, and risking his reputation as a professional and collaborative driver. He could be seen as someone who wants to take control, which could cause resistance within the team. Alternatively, he could choose to stick with his current engineer, Riccardo Adami. However, that decision would not be without consequences. Every race without a solid connection between driver and engineer is a wasted opportunity. Time is lost, points evaporate, and momentum fades. Ultimately, the 8th title he has been chasing since the 2021 season could slip away again. So far, Ferrari seems to still want to maintain harmony. They have chosen the path of peace and continue to repeat the same old narrative, it takes time. But in Formula One, time is not an ally. It is a silent enemy that erodes. It exposes weaknesses, widens gaps, and slowly destroys dreams. If Ferrari insists on holding on to Riccardo Adami solely for internal loyalty's sake, they're sending a dangerous message to the world. They prioritize internal politics over great potential knocking at their door. Whether they realize it or not, this message is a subtle rejection of a major project that should be the cornerstone of a new era, the Hamilton era. When an engineer becomes a symbol of cultural resistance rather than a strategic partner supporting the team's direction, the real battle is no longer fought on the racetrack. It has shifted into the garage, behind closed doors, where ego, history, and resistance to change reign supreme. Lewis Hamilton, the world champion who came with a mission to restore Ferrari's glory, now appears to be a soldier without a command. He is fighting on a field that is not in his favor, bringing a vision of the future to an environment that is still trapped in the shadow of the past. If Ferrari doesn't listen soon, they will lose more than just a chance to win. They will lose a golden opportunity to reshape the team's identity in a new era of Formula One. Hamilton didn't come to Ferrari to win. He came to make history. To change the narrative. To conquer the most legendary team in Formula One history and cap off his career with an 8th title. But none of that would have been possible without the voice he trusted in his ear. Until now, that voice has been absent. There has been silence. In Hamilton's world, which is built on trust, signals, and communication, silence is death. Every second of every race is a reminder that it's not just the clock ticking away. It's the trust slipping away, too. When you see Lewis Hamilton driving slightly offline, hesitating, or arriving late, remember, it's not about age. It's about the voice. When that voice can no longer be trusted, even the greatest drivers can become mere mortals. Did Ferrari make a strategic mistake by retaining an engineer who lacks a personal connection with Hamilton? Let us know what you think in the comments below.